A young black boy named Jordan notices a little girl, Emily, upset after her favorite toy breaks. Feeling compassion, he offers to fix it for her, turning what could have been a sad moment into a heartwarming act of kindness. What Jordan doesn't realize is that his small gesture will lead to life-changing consequences far beyond what anyone could have imagined. So how does Jordan's generosity transform the situation, and what surprising turn of events does it inspire? You need to stick around to find out. But before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from today, and if you enjoy this tale, don't forget to subscribe. In the heart of Millbrook, a small town where everyone knew their neighbors by name, lived a remarkable boy named Jordan Carter. At just 12 years old, Jordan had already earned a reputation as the go-to handyman for the community. His nimble fingers and keen eye for detail allowed him to breathe new life into broken objects, from rusty bicycles to finicky radios. Jordan's home, a modest two-bedroom house on Maple Street, stood in stark contrast to the grand houses that lined the nearby Oak Avenue. Despite their humble circumstances, Jordan and his mother, Lisa, always had smiles on their faces and warmth in their hearts. "Jordan, honey, can you help Mrs. Jenkins with her toaster again?" Lisa called out one sunny Saturday morning. Jordan poked his head out from his makeshift workshop in the garage. "Sure, Mom. I'll be right there." As Jordan trotted down the street with his toolbox in hand, he waved to familiar faces. Mr. Gus, tending to his prized roses, tipped his hat. "There goes our little fixer-upper," he chuckled. Jordan grinned, his gap-toothed smile radiating pure joy. He loved nothing more than the satisfaction of making something work again, of seeing the relief and happiness on people's faces when he solved their problems. Meanwhile, just a few blocks away on Oak Avenue, a different scene was unfolding. In a sprawling Victorian house with perfectly manicured lawns, 7-year-old Emily Thompson sat on her bedroom floor, tears streaming down her cherubic face. "Oh, sweetie, don't cry," said her mother, Amelia Thompson, kneeling beside her daughter. "We'll figure something out." Emily clutched a delicate porcelain music box to her chest. The lid was slightly askew, and no matter how many times she wound the key, not a single note played. This wasn't just any music box. It was a precious gift from her grandmother, who had passed away the previous year. "But Grandma gave it to me," Emily hiccuped between sobs. "She said it would always play music for me when I missed her." Robert Thompson, Emily's father, entered the room, his brow furrowed with concern. He was still dressed in his crisp business suit, having just returned from a long day at the office. "What's the matter, Princess?" he asked, crouching down next to his wife and daughter. Amelia explained the situation, and Robert gently took the music box from Emily's hands. He examined it closely, turning it this way and that, but the intricate mechanism inside was beyond his understanding. "How about we take it to that antique shop in the city?" Amelia suggested. "They might be able to fix it." Robert shook his head. "That could take weeks, and there's no guarantee they won't damage it further." He paused, an idea forming. "You know, I heard some of the neighbors talking about a young boy who's good with repairs. Maybe we could ask him to take a look." Emily's eyes widened with hope. "Really, Daddy? Do you think he could fix it?" Robert smiled, ruffling his daughter's blonde curls. "It's worth a try, sweetheart. Why don't we go find him right now?" Hand in hand, the Thompson family walked down Oak Avenue, crossing the invisible boundary that separated their affluent neighborhood from the more modest part of town. As they turned onto Maple Street, they saw a young black boy walking in their direction, toolbox swinging at his side. "Excuse me," Robert called out. "We're looking for a boy who's good at fixing things. Would that happen to be you?" Jordan stopped, surprised to see such well-dressed people in his neighborhood. He nodded, a little shy but eager to help. "Yes, sir. I'm Jordan. What can I do for you?" Emily stepped forward, her blue eyes still glistening with tears. She held out the music box. "Can you fix this? It was my grandma's, and it won't play anymore." Jordan carefully took the music box, immediately noticing its delicate craftsmanship. He opened the lid, peering inside at the complex mechanism. It was unlike anything he'd worked on before, but the challenge excited him. "I've never fixed a music box," Jordan admitted honestly, "but I'd like to try if you'll let me." Robert knelt down to Jordan's eye level. "Son, this music box means the world to my daughter. Are you sure you're up for the task?" Jordan met Mr. Thompson's gaze with determination. "I promise to do my very best, sir. I know how important special things can be." Emily, who had been hiding behind her father's legs, slowly emerged. She looked at Jordan with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "You'll be careful with it, right?" she asked in a small voice. Jordan's face softened as he addressed Emily directly. "I'll treat it like it's the most precious thing in the world," he assured her, "because I know that's what it is to you." Emily's lips curved into a tentative smile. She reached out and touched Jordan's hand lightly. "Thank you," she whispered. As the Thompsons prepared to leave, Robert handed Jordan his business card. "Please call us when you're finished, no matter the outcome, and don't hesitate to reach out if you need any resources to complete the repair." Jordan nodded, clutching the music box carefully. He watched as the family walked away, Emily turning back to wave shyly. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on his young shoulders, but it was a weight he welcomed. Jordan walked through the front door of his modest home on Maple Street. The delicate music box in his hands represented more than just a broken toy. It was a piece of someone's heart, a tangible link to cherished memories. "Mom, I'm home," Jordan called out, his voice tinged with excitement and nervousness. Lisa Carter emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her eyes widened as she saw the ornate music box in her son's hands. "What you got there, honey?" Jordan carefully placed the music box on the dining table and explained the situation to his mother. Lisa listened intently, her face softening with pride as she heard about her son's promise to help the little girl from Oak Avenue. "Oh, Jordan," she said, pulling him into a warm hug. "You've got such a big heart, just like your grandpa." Jordan's eyes lit up at the mention of his grandfather. "I wish he was here, Mom. He'd know exactly how to fix this." Lisa cupped her son's face in her hands. "He may not be here in person, but his spirit lives on in you, baby, and I know he'd be so proud of the young man you're becoming." With renewed determination, Jordan carefully carried the music box to his makeshift workshop in the garage. It was a cluttered space filled with odds and ends, spare parts, and an assortment of tools, some inherited from his grandfather, others cobbled together from yard sales and thrift stores. As Jordan settled onto his worn stool, he began to examine the music box more closely. The porcelain exterior was exquisite, painted with delicate flowers and gilded edges that spoke of a bygone era. But it was the intricate mechanism inside that both fascinated and intimidated him. "All right," Jordan muttered to himself. "Let's see what we're dealing with here." He carefully opened the lid, revealing a complex array of gears, springs, and levers. It was unlike anything he had ever worked on before. Jordan's brow furrowed in concentration as he tried to understand how all the pieces fit together. Hours ticked by as Jordan tinkered with the music box. He consulted old repair manuals his grandfather had left behind, watched online tutorials on his mom's tablet, and even called Mr. Gus from down the street, who had a penchant for antiques. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the garage, Lisa peeked in to check on her son. She found Jordan hunched over his workbench, his face a mask of intense concentration. "How's it going, sweetie?" she asked softly, not wanting to startle him. Jordan looked up, frustration evident in his eyes. "It's harder than I thought, Mom. There are so many tiny parts, and I'm afraid I'll break something if I'm not careful." Lisa walked over and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You know, your grandpa used to say that the toughest fixes are often the most rewarding. Why don't you take a break and have some dinner? A fresh perspective might help." Reluctantly, Jordan agreed. As they sat at the kitchen table eating reheated lasagna, Lisa couldn't help but notice the faraway look in her son's eyes. "What's on your mind, Jordan?" she asked gently. Jordan pushed his food around his plate. "I was just thinking about Emily. That's the little girl who owns the music box. She looked so sad when she gave it to me. What if I can't fix it, Mom? What if I let her down?" Lisa reached across the table and squeezed her son's hand. "Jordan, listen to me. The fact that you're trying so hard, that you care so much, that already means the world to that little girl and her family. Sometimes, our best is all we can give, and that's more than enough." Her words seemed to lift some of the weight from Jordan's shoulders. He finished his dinner with renewed energy and headed back to the garage, determined to make progress. In the Thompson household, Emily lay in her bed, unable to sleep. She clutched her favorite stuffed animal, a well-worn teddy bear, and stared at the empty spot on her nightstand where the music box usually sat. "Do you think we can fix it, Teddy?" she whispered to her bear. Amelia, passing by her daughter's room, overheard the one-sided conversation. She paused in the doorway, her heart aching for her little girl. "Emily, sweetie?" she called softly. "Are you still awake?" Emily sat up, nodding. Amelia crossed the room and perched on the edge of the bed, gathering her daughter into her arms. "I know you're worried about your music box," Amelia said, stroking Emily's hair. "But remember what Grandma always said, have faith in the goodness of others." Emily nodded against her mother's chest. "Jordan seems nice," she murmured. Amelia smiled. "That's right. And do you know what else? Sometimes, when things break, they come back even stronger than before, just like people." And Emily drifted off to sleep, comforted by her mother's words. As the night wore on, Jordan faced setback after setback. A tiny spring snapped as he tried to reposition it. A gear refused to align properly. The more he worked, the more impossible the task seemed. In a moment of frustration, Jordan pushed away from the workbench, tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. He was about to give up when his gaze fell on an old photograph tacked to the wall. It showed a younger version of himself, maybe 6 or 7 years old, standing proudly next to his grandfather. They were both covered in grease, grinning widely as they posed in front of an old radio they had just fixed together. The memory of that day came flooding back to Jordan. He remembered how many times they had almost given up, how his grandfather had encouraged him to keep trying, to think creatively. "When you hit a wall, Jordan boy," his grandfather's voice echoed in his mind. "That's when you've got to get clever. There's always a solution. Sometimes you just need to look at the problem from a different angle." Inspired by the memory, Jordan took a deep breath and returned to the music box. This time, instead of focusing on the individual parts that weren't working, he tried to understand how they all fit together as a whole. As the first rays of dawn began to peek through the garage windows, Jordan had a breakthrough. He realized that the main problem wasn't a broken part at all. It was that the entire mechanism had shifted slightly out of alignment over the years. With steady hands and bated breath, Jordan carefully adjusted the positioning of the gears and springs. He wound the key, his heart pounding in anticipation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like magic, a soft tinkling melody filled the air. Jordan's face split into a wide grin. He had done it. The music box was playing again, its sweet notes a testament to his perseverance and skill. "Mom! Mom! Come quick!" Jordan shouted, unable to contain his excitement. Lisa came running into the garage, still in her pajamas. When she heard the music playing, her eyes filled with tears of pride. "Oh, Jordan," she whispered, pulling him into a tight hug. "You did it, baby. You really did it." As they stood there, listening to the delicate melody, Jordan felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything he'd experienced before. He'd faced a challenge, persevered through difficulties, and emerged victorious. More importantly, he made a real difference in someone's life. The rest of the morning was spent carefully cleaning and polishing the music box. Jordan oiled the hinges so the lid opened smoothly and made sure every note played perfectly. As he worked, he couldn't stop smiling, imagining the joy on Emily's face when she heard her grandmother's lullaby once more. As Jordan prepared to return the music box, Lisa helped him wrap it carefully in a soft cloth. She looked at her son, noticing how he seemed to have grown taller overnight, his eyes shining with a new confidence. "You know," Lisa said softly, "your grandpa always said you had a special gift. He knew you'd do great things one day." Jordan ducked his head, embarrassed but pleased. "I just hope Emily likes it," he mumbled. Lisa chuckled, ruffling his hair. "Oh, I think she'll more than like it. You've given her back a piece of her heart." Jordan set off for Oak Avenue, the repaired music box cradled carefully in his arms. He felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, the warm summer sun on his face and the weight of his accomplishment in his hands filled him with a sense of purpose. The walk to the Thompson house seemed both longer and shorter than he remembered. Each step brought him closer to the moment of truth. Would Emily be happy with the repair? Would the music box live up to her expectations? As he turned onto Oak Avenue, Jordan couldn't help but feel a little out of place. The grand houses with their manicured lawns were a far cry from his own modest neighborhood. But the memory of Emily's hopeful face and Mr. Thompson's trust in him bolstered his confidence. Jordan approached the Thompsons' house, his heart racing. Before he could even reach the front door, it swung open. Emily stood there, her blue eyes wide with anticipation. "Jordan!" she exclaimed, bouncing on her toes. "Is it? Did you fix it?" Jordan couldn't help but smile at her excitement. "Why don't you see for yourself?" he said carefully, handing over the wrapped music box. With trembling hands, Emily unwrapped the cloth. The music box looked just as she remembered it, its porcelain surface gleaming in the sunlight. She glanced up at Jordan, who nodded encouragingly. Holding her breath, Emily opened the lid. For a moment, there was silence. Then, as if by magic, the sweet, familiar notes of her grandmother's lullaby filled the air. Emily's eyes filled with tears of joy. She looked up at Jordan, her face radiant with happiness. "You fixed it," she whispered. "You really fixed it." Before Jordan could respond, Emily threw her arms around him in a tight hug. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," she repeated, her words muffled against his shirt. Jordan, slightly overwhelmed by her reaction, patted her back awkwardly. "I'm just glad I could help," he said softly. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson appeared in the doorway, drawn by the sound of the music and their daughter's excited cries. When they saw the scene before them, Emily hugging Jordan, the repaired music box playing its sweet melody, their faces lit up with gratitude and amazement. "Young man," Mr. Thompson said, his voice thick with emotion, "you've done more than just fix a music box. You've restored a piece of our family's history. How can we ever thank you?" Jordan, suddenly shy in the face of such praise, shrugged. "I'm just glad I could help, sir. It was a challenge, but my grandpa always said that the toughest fixes are often the most rewarding. Mrs. Thompson wiped a tear from her eye. Your grandfather sounds like a wise man. Jordan nodded. He taught me a lot. Mr. Thompson continued, Jordan, we'd like to do something to show our appreciation. Would you and your mother join us for dinner tonight? We'd love to thank you properly. Jordan's eyes widened in surprise. I'd have to ask my mom, but I'd like that, Mr. Thompson. Thank you. As Jordan turned to leave, promising to return that evening with his mother, he felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything he'd experienced before. He'd faced a challenge, persevered through difficulties, and emerged victorious. More importantly, he'd made a real difference in someone's life. Walking back down Oak Avenue, Jordan's mind raced with possibilities. He thought about all the other broken things in the world, all the people who needed help. Maybe, just maybe, he could be the one to fix them. When Jordan arrived home, he found his mother waiting anxiously on the front porch. The moment she saw his beaming face, she knew the repair had been a success. Oh, honey, she said, pulling him into a hug. I'm so proud of you. Tell me everything. As they sat on the porch swing, Jordan recounted the events of the morning. Emily's joy, the Thompsons' gratitude, and the dinner invitation. Lisa listened intently, her heart swelling with pride for her son. You know, she said softly, your grandpa always said you had a special gift. He knew you'd do great things. Jordan leaned against his mother, feeling both excited and a little overwhelmed by the events of the past day. Do you think Grandpa would be proud? He asked hesitantly. Lisa kissed the top of his head. Oh, baby, he'd be over the moon. You're living the dream he always had for you. Jordan smiled, thinking of his grandfather's weathered hands guiding his own as they worked on an old radio. I'm going to make you both proud, he said softly. As they stepped into their small house, the contrast with the Thompsons' grand home was stark, but to Jordan, it had never felt more like home. This was where he had learned the value of hard work, where his mother had sacrificed so much to give him a chance at a better life. That night, as Jordan lay in bed, his mind raced with thoughts of the future. He imagined himself in a lab coat, designing incredible machines. He saw himself returning to his old neighborhood, helping other kids like him realize their dreams. But most of all, he thought about the music box, such a small thing, really, but it had changed everything. As he drifted off to sleep, the sweet melody of Emily's grandmother's lullaby seemed to float through the air, a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the things we thought were broken beyond repair. The next morning, Jordan woke up early, filled with a new sense of purpose. As he helped his mother make breakfast, he couldn't stop talking about all the possibilities that lay ahead. Mom, he said suddenly, pausing in the middle of setting the table. I want to do something for Mr. Thompson to show him how grateful I am. Lisa smiled, ruffling her son's hair. That's a wonderful idea, honey. What did you have in mind? Jordan thought for a moment, then his face lit up. I know. Remember that old clock in their living room, the one that wasn't working? I bet I could fix it for them. Lisa nodded approvingly. I think that's perfect, Jordan. It shows initiative and gratitude. Exactly. The next day, Jordan called the Thompson house nervously, asking if he could come over to look at the clock. Mr. Thompson sounded delighted by the offer, inviting him over immediately. As Jordan worked on the clock, carefully dismantling it and examining each part, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. This was what he loved, what he was meant to do. And now, thanks to Mr. Thompson's generosity, he had the chance to turn this passion into a real future. Hours passed as Jordan tinkered with the clock. The Thompsons checked on him occasionally, bringing him snacks and words of encouragement. Finally, As the afternoon sun began to slant through the windows, Jordan heard the satisfying tick-tock of the restored clock. "It's working," he called out excitedly. The Thompsons gathered around, marveling at the now-functioning antique. Mr. Thompson clapped Jordan on the shoulder, his eyes shining with pride. "You've got a real gift, son," he said warmly, "and I can't wait to see how you'll use it to change the world." As Jordan walked home that evening, the weight of the future rested on his shoulders. But it wasn't a burden. It was a promise to work hard, to never forget where he came from, and to use his skills to help others just as he'd been helped. The melody of Emily's music box seemed to follow him down the street, a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful symphonies start with a single, simple note. And for Jordan, this was just the beginning of his song. The autumn leaves crunched beneath Jordan's feet as he made his way up the imposing stone steps of Westfield Academy. His new school uniform felt stiff and unfamiliar, but the excitement bubbling in his chest overshadowed any discomfort. As he pushed open the heavy wooden doors, Jordan couldn't help but marvel at how much his life had changed in just a few short months. The hallways of Westfield were a far cry from his old public school. Polished marble floors reflected the sunlight streaming through tall windows, and the walls were adorned with portraits of distinguished alumni. Jordan felt a momentary pang of self-doubt, wondering if he truly belonged in such a prestigious institution. But then he remembered Mr. Thompson's words on the day he dropped Jordan off for his entrance exams. "Remember, Jordan, you earned your place here. Your mind and your determination got you through those doors. Not my recommendation or anyone else's." Taking a deep breath, Jordan straightened his shoulders and made his way to his first class. As he settled into his seat, he couldn't help but smile at the thought of all the new things he was about to learn. The first few weeks at Westfield were a whirlwind of new experiences. Jordan found himself challenged in ways he'd never been before, tackling advanced math problems and diving into complex scientific theories. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, he felt invigorated. Every new concept was like a puzzle waiting to be solved, and Jordan approached each challenge with the same determination he'd used to fix Emily's music box. His teachers quickly took notice of his enthusiasm and aptitude. Mr. Kendrick, the physics teacher, often stayed after class to discuss advanced topics with Jordan, nurturing his growing passion for engineering. "You've got a real talent, Jordan," Mr. Kendrick said one afternoon, as they pored over a diagram of a complex machine. "But more importantly, you've got the drive to turn that talent into something extraordinary." Jordan beamed at the praise, feeling a surge of gratitude for the opportunity he'd been given. "Thank you, sir. I just want to make the most of this chance." As Jordan thrived academically, he also found himself forming new friendships. His classmates were initially curious about the new scholarship student, but Jordan's warmth and intelligence quickly won them over. He joined the robotics club, where he found kindred spirits who shared his passion for building and creating. But despite his busy schedule at Westfield, Jordan never forgot the people who had made his new life possible. Every Friday afternoon, he'd make his way to the Thompson house, where Emily would be waiting eagerly for their weekly tinkering session. What had started as a simple gesture of gratitude, Jordan offering to teach Emily some basic repair skills, had blossomed into a cherished tradition for both of them. They'd spread out their tools on the kitchen table, surrounded by broken toys, malfunctioning gadgets, and half-finished inventions. Jordan looked up as Emily exclaimed one sunny afternoon, holding up a small motor she'd successfully wired. "It's working!" Jordan grinned, giving her a high five. "Great job! You're getting really good at this." As they worked, Jordan would often share stories about his week at Westfield, explaining complex concepts in ways that Emily could understand. Her eyes would light up with curiosity, absorbing every word. "Do you think I could go to Westfield someday?" she asked once, her voice tinged with hope. Jordan ruffled her hair affectionately. Of course you could. You're smart and hardworking. That's all you need. And hey, maybe by then I'll be one of the teachers. These afternoons weren't just about tinkering, though. They were about friendship, about bridging the gap between two worlds that might never have intersected if not for a broken music box. Jordan and Emily's bond grew stronger with each passing week, transcending age and background. The Thompsons and the Carters, too, found their lives increasingly intertwined. Lisa Carter, initially hesitant about accepting such a grand gesture from the Thompsons, soon found herself forming a close friendship with Amelia Thompson. They chatted over coffee while the kids worked on their projects, sharing stories and advice. Robert Thompson took his role as Jordan's mentor seriously, often inviting the boy to his study for long conversations about his future. He introduced Jordan to colleagues in the engineering field, arranged internships during school breaks, and always made sure Jordan knew he had someone in his corner. "Remember, Jordan," Mr. Thompson said during one of their talks, "success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about how you use that success to lift others up." Those words stuck with Jordan, becoming a guiding principle as he navigated his new world. As the years passed, Jordan's potential blossomed into true talent. He graduated from Westfield at the top of his class, earning a full scholarship to a prestigious engineering program. College brought new challenges and opportunities, but Jordan approached them with the same determination and creativity he'd shown since childhood. During his sophomore year of college, Jordan received an excited call from Emily. "Jordan, guess what? I got in. I'm coming to Westfield next year." Jordan's face split into a wide grin. "That's amazing, Emily. I knew you could do it. We'll have to celebrate next time I'm home." Their friendship had endured despite the distance, with Emily following in Jordan's footsteps and developing her own passion for science and technology. Jordan couldn't help but feel a sense of pride, knowing he played a small part in inspiring her journey. After college, Jordan's career took off rapidly. His innovative designs and problem-solving skills made him a rising star in the engineering world. He found himself working on cutting-edge projects, developing technologies that had the potential to change lives. But even as his success grew, Jordan never forgot where he came from or the people who had helped him along the way. The lessons he'd learned from his grandfather, the sacrifices his mother had made, and the generosity of the Thompsons. All of these shaped his worldview and his goals. On his 30th birthday, Jordan stood before a small crowd gathered in the community center of his old neighborhood. The faces looking back at him were young and eager, reminding him of himself at that age. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice carrying easily through the auditorium. 15 years ago, I sat where you're sitting now, a scholarship student from a neighborhood not too different from the ones many of you call home. I was scared, excited, and determined to make the most of the opportunity I'd been given. As Jordan shared his story, from fixing the music box to founding Fixing Futures, he could see the students leaning forward in their seats, hanging on to every word. In the front row, he spotted a familiar face. Emily, now a teacher at Westfield, beaming with pride. "The lesson I want you all to take away today is this," Jordan said, nearing the end of his speech. "Success isn't just about what you achieve for yourself. It's about how you use that success to lift others up. Each of you has the power to make a difference, to be the person who believes in someone else's potential. Never underestimate the impact a single act of kindness can have." As the applause died down in the Westfield Academy auditorium, Jordan stepped off the stage, his heart full of emotion. Emily was the first to reach him, enveloping him in a warm hug. "That was incredible, Jordan," she said, her eyes shining with pride. "You've come so far, and you're inspiring so many." Jordan smiled, squeezing her hand. "We've both come a long way, Emily. I couldn't have done it without you and your family." As they made their way through the crowd of students eager to speak with Jordan, a young boy caught his attention. The boy was hanging back, clutching a battered notebook to his chest, his eyes wide with a mix of admiration and hesitation. Jordan approached him with a gentle smile. "Hey there, what's your name?" "Marcus," the boy replied softly. "I really liked your speech, Mr. Carter." Jordan knelt down to Marcus's level. "Thank you, Marcus. I'm glad it resonated with you. Is there something on your mind?" Marcus hesitated, then opened his notebook. Inside were detailed sketches of machines and gadgets, some far beyond what one would expect from a student his age. "I like inventing things," he said, his voice gaining confidence. "But some of the other kids think it's weird. They say I should focus on sports instead." Jordan's eyes lit up as he examined the sketches. "Marcus, these are incredible. You know, when I was your age, I felt the same way. But let me tell you a secret. Being different, having a passion that others might not understand, that's what makes you special." Jordan turned to a blank page in Marcus's notebook and quickly sketched out a simple circuit diagram. "Here's a little project for you. If you build this, it'll light up whenever someone walks into a room. Why don't you give it a try and show me how it goes at the next Fixing Futures workshop?" Marcus's face broke into a wide grin. "Really? You think I could do that?" Jordan nodded, reaching into his pocket for a business card. "Absolutely. Here, give this to your parents and have them call me. We'll get you all set up." As Jordan stood to leave, the boy looked up at him curiously. "Mister, how did you learn to fix things so well?" Jordan paused, a warm smile spreading across his face as he thought about the journey that had brought him here. "Well," he said, "it's a long story, but it all started with a broken music box and a little girl who believed I could fix it." As Jordan began to share his story with the wide-eyed boy, he felt a profound sense of gratitude and purpose. The cycle of kindness that had begun with Mr. Thompson's generous offer had come full circle. Now it was Jordan's turn to pass on the gift of opportunity, one fixed toy and one inspired child at a time. In that moment, standing on the steps of his old neighborhood with a repaired toy car and an eager young listener, Jordan knew that this was just the beginning. A new chapter filled with even greater possibilities, challenges, and opportunities to make a difference. As Jordan drove home that night, the melody of Emily's old music box played in his mind, a reminder of where he'd started and how far he'd come. But more than that, it was a promise to keep the music of hope and opportunity playing for as many people as he could reach. The future was bright, full of potential and promise. And Jordan Carter, the boy who could fix anything, was ready to face it head-on, one broken dream at a time.